Chapter 14, Part 2. Annabelle. Yes, we felt safe with him, but he was just a baby himself, really, thinking back. He'd crossed the ocean with no experience and no idea what to do. But as far as I can remember, he didn't show it. He was always so positive and reassuring. Thinking back now, he must have been terrified. But for us, he kept those emotions hidden. I remember our first few nights in the city as though it were yesterday. Ernie had some money, not a huge amount, but enough to get us a room for the first month or so, and to feed and clothe us while he formulated a plan. I can't remember much of that time, other than Ernie making sure we were okay. We were just so happy to have regular food and a warm bed. He must have secured some work, but probably on a night shift somewhere when we were in bed. But I don't remember. He must have been doing 24-hour days looking after us and earning what he could when we were asleep. Rebecca. He must also have been trying to find our parents at the same time too. After a couple of months, I remember him coming back one evening with news that shook our world. He had found them. In the Bronx somewhere. Unbeknown to us at the time, Ernie had spent hours, days, weeks trying to track down our parents. He didn't say anything for fear of disappointing us. But he'd been all over the city asking questions, chasing dead ends and clinging on to hope and chance. And then he found them. Annabelle. Our dad was working as a waiter in a restaurant and our mother in a shoe shop. I remember he came back with the news. We were just blown away. He said he had spoken to a friend of a friend who knew them or knew of them. He had travelled to the Bronx, and there they were, alive and well. He didn't speak to them or introduce himself. He didn't feel like it was his place to. He wanted that pleasure to be ours. Rebecca. I remember the day that we were reunited as though it were yesterday. Ernie made sure we were well dressed and cleaned up for the occasion. We walked the 3 or 4 miles to the Bronx together. I was so nervous, but so excited too. We hadn't seen our parents for over 5 years, but their faces were so clear in my mind. I remember everything about them, from the sparkle in my mother's eyes and the feel of my father's whiskers on my cheek when he gave us those lovely tight hugs. As we walked, I had never felt so scared in all my life. Not from the Nazis, not from anything. Ernie held our hands and kept telling us it would be okay, telling us he was there for us every step of the way. Annabelle. We arrived at Father's place of work just before closing time, and we sat on a wall opposite, waiting for the staff to leave. Rebecca and I had always been so close. We needed each other, we relied on each other. We never argued or rowed. That day, we had never felt closer. And then we spotted him. Both ladies were crying at this point. Tears streamed down their faces, and the three of us didn't feel we need to comfort them or interrupt their flow. These weren't tears of sadness. They were the happiest of tears. Rebecca continued. He looked so much older, worn down, I suppose, by burden and worry. But underneath that shell was the man we loved so much. We jumped off the wall at the same time and ran towards him. When he first spotted us, his face was a picture of terror. And then, Annabelle continued, everything about him changed. He stood tall, his eyes shone and his face lit up with ecstasy. If I could have captured that moment and bottled it, I would have done. We both ran to him and reached him at the same time. We wrapped our arms around him so tightly. Straight away that same smell of my daddy consumed me. He held us so tight, I thought I was going to explode. But I didn't want him to stop. Not ever. It was magical. Rebecca. My daddy. Our daddy. Alive. Healthy. in my arms. Few moments in life are treasured to that extent. We held each other for what seemed like forever. Eventually we parted, but we kept hold of each other's hands. We were all crying uncontrollably now. I looked around for Ernie, and there he was, back on the wall in the distance. He knew this was our moment, and he wasn't going to intrude, and yet he'd made this all possible. I can't remember what we said to Daddy, but he ran to Ernie, collapsed at his feet, and sobbed. Ernie sat down on the floor beside him and held his hand. After some while again we set off to the house. We were desperate to see our mother. I remember on the way my father and Ernie talking about my mother. When we arrived, Father wanted Ernie to join us, but he insisted it was a family matter and not his place to intrude. Even though my father tried to insist, Ernie was adamant. He promised he would wait outside the house, however long it took, and take it from there. Annabelle. I seem to remember our mother was cooking some kind of stew when Father took us in and introduced us to her again. She fainted, there and then. And when she came to, when we sat around the table smiling at her, I might be wrong, but I think she fainted a second time. But when she was able to sit up straight, she stared at us like we were ghosts. It's totally understandable now, but I think at the time we were both a little frightened of her, or the whole situation. Rebecca. Terrified, you mean? And then the hugs and kisses. It was simply magical. We were together again, as a family, unbelievably so. And Ernie had made it happen. Annabelle. The four of us went out to find him. My mother couldn't wait to meet him. I realised we must have been in the house for hours, hugging, kissing, chatting, catching up. And yet there he was, propped up against a fence, snoozing, waiting for us. To this day, I will never truly know why he gave so much to us for nothing, but I'm eternally grateful. Rebecca. When our parents died of old age, both in 1985, I didn't feel sadness in the way most people would on losing their parents. I felt so happy that we'd had the chance to spend another 36 years with them, and I can honestly say, without a hint of a lie, we never had one argument in all that time. It just wasn't worth it. We appreciated every second we spent with them again. Annabelle. The bad years of the war will never be forgotten, but I have so much belief in the human spirit and love and family and faith that I'll never accept evil can win over good. Our guardian angel came in the form of a young Englishman. Without him, I would have lost all hope a long time ago. I would have given up. But he never gave up. He never lost hope. He never did. Always positive, always smiling, always happy. It wasn't just us. He made everyone happy, everywhere he went and whoever he spoke to. I've never known such a person before or since. I miss him so much. I do hope he's okay wherever he is. Rebecca. I think of him every day, every day. He stayed with us on weekends now and again, and I'm ashamed to say that our newfound family life and selfish adolescence, teenage years meant we didn't stay in regular contact after a while. It wasn't like it is now with everyone owning a mobile phone. We weren't streetwise or upwardly mobile. We lived within the borough. We didn't truly appreciate what he'd done for us until it was no longer there. For a time, he visited regularly and made sure we were all fine. He spoke with our parents often and wrote to them to check we were okay. It was only when we were older and wiser did we appreciate just how much he did for us, for our family. He was just happy that we were happy and reunited. If I have one regret in life, it is that we never kept in contact with him. My heart sank again. Was this the end of the line? Then Annabel spoke again. He kept in touch through letters for some time after, But as Rebecca said, we were too wrapped up in ourselves and our reunited family to truly appreciate what he'd done for us. I don't know. Maybe we took him for granted. Maybe we thought he was always going to be there and part of our lives. My father once took us to visit him in Midtown where he was staying. He was quite the local entrepreneur then. That must have been around 1952, and that was the last time we met him, I think. I hope he had an amazing life. He deserved to. He was our saviour, our hero, and inspiration. Mr. Brunskill, I hope we've been able to help you. I hope we've been of some use to you. And let me just say, you haven't come this far only to come this far. You must have so many questions to ask us. Don't give up now. Ernie wouldn't have done, and it seems like there's a lot of him in you. I did have 1,000,001 questions in my head, and we talked and shared stories, but the one question that kept leaping out above all the others was, whatever happened to Daniel Frankenberg, and when did Ernie become Ernie again? Rebecca chuckled. That's an easy one to start with. Get your paper and pen ready, Mr. Brunskill. Time is of the essence, I believe, and you have work to do.